I'm standing outside a pharmacy in Vienna at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, staring at a handwritten sign taped to the door that says, Mittagspause 14 to 1500 hours. The store is closed. For lunch. At the exact moment I need allergy medication. An American woman next to me is already on her phone, scrolling with one hand while holding her rental car keys in the other. She looks up at the sign, then at me. This can't be legal, she says. I tell her it's completely normal here. She shakes her head and starts typing a review on her phone. Back home, pharmacies understand that emergencies don't take lunch break. The owner is clearly violating some kind of duty of care regulation. I mention that Austrian labor law actually protects midday break. She scoffs and says she'll be filing a complaint with the Austrian Business Bureau. That doesn't exist. The pharmacy reopens at 3. She's still there at 3:02, informing the pharmacist about American OSHA standard. The pharmacist hands her the antihistamines without comment. That's the thing about Americans abroad. We expect the world to operate on the 24/7 access we've built our entire economy around, and when it doesn't, we assume someone's breaking a rule that must exist somewhere. My friend Jake discovered this in Seville when every single shop on his street closed at 2 p.m. He stood in the plaza, genuinely convinced he'd stumbled into some kind of municipal holiday he hadn't heard about. When I explained Siesta, he said Spain must have terrible productivity metric. I mentioned Spain has a larger economy than Florida. He said that couldn't be right and spent the next hour Googling European GDP data instead of enjoying his paella. Later, we walked past 3 different stores with Cerrado 14 to 1700 hours signs, and each time he'd mutter something about lost revenue. By day 3, he drafted an email to the Seville Chamber of Commerce suggesting they implement rotating shift. He never sent it, but he also never stopped checking his watch during those afternoon hours, as if his personal disapproval could reopen the shutters through sheer force of will. The pattern repeats everywhere. In Greece, it's Masimari. In Italy, riposo. Every Mediterranean country has a version, and every American tourist treats it like a personal inconvenience designed specifically to ruin their vacation. We don't just think it's inefficient. We think it's morally wrong, that there's something fundamentally broken about a business culture that prioritizes rest over immediate consumer satisfaction. We've convinced ourselves that convenience is a human right, that being unable to buy toothpaste at 3 a.m. represents some kind of market failure. And when Europeans shrug and say the shops open later, we hear that as an admission of defeat rather than a completely different set of priorities. I watched an American woman in a Krakow supermarket argue with the manager for 6 minutes about why the store closed at 2 p.m. on a Sunday. She kept repeating that Sunday is the biggest shopping day in America, that her family does their whole weekly grocery run on Sunday afternoons, and that Polish retail is missing out on their highest revenue opportunity. The manager explained that Poland has Sunday trading laws to protect workers. She said that sounded like communism and asked if they'd considered the economic impact. He told her the law passed in 2018 with public support. She said the public didn't understand business fundamentals and started explaining market efficiency to him while holding a basket of frozen pierogi. He waited until she finished, then pointed out that the store actually closed 3 minutes ago and she needed to pay or leave. She bought the pierogi, went outside, and called it a forced transaction under duress. The store opened again on Tuesday at 9 a.m. She showed up at 8:55 to prove a point nobody was tracking. My cousin visiting from Seattle had a full breakdown in rural Bavaria when he couldn't find a single open grocery store on Sunday morning. He'd run out of coffee, and to him, that constituted a legitimate emergency. I suggested the bakery down the street, which was open. He said he didn't want bread. He wanted his usual brand of cold brew. I explained that German Sunday laws restrict retail to protect rest days. He said that was a violation of consumer choice and probably actionable under EU commerce regulations. I mentioned Germany basically wrote those regulations. He said they obviously included a weekend exemption clause that local stores were ignoring. By noon, he'd called 3 different municipal offices asking about emergency provisions for caffeine access. None of them called back. He spent the rest of the day drinking espresso from the bakery and telling me it wasn't the same. On Monday morning, he bought 7 bags of coffee grounds and stored them like a prepper expecting societal collapse. When I asked if he thought he was overreacting, he said he was being appropriately prepared for a regulatory environment that doesn't prioritize customer needs. That's American crisis management. We see one closed store and immediately start building contingency systems to prevent future inconvenience. Athens has a law, still technically on the books, that mandates quiet hours between 3 and 5 p.m. This means construction noise is supposed to stop, shops can close, and the whole city takes a collective breath during the hottest part of the afternoon. An American contractor I met at a cafe didn't believe this was enforced until his jackhammer rental got shut down by a municipal inspector at 3:17 p.m. He tried arguing that he'd paid for a full day's rental, that his project had a tight deadline, and that Athens couldn't expect to modernize its infrastructure if it halted work for arbitrary nap schedules. The inspector said the law exists for public welfare, not construction convenience. The contractor said public welfare would improve faster with completed projects and cited American construction timelines as evidence of what's possible without midday shutdowns. The inspector wrote him a citation and left. The contractor spent the next hour calling his embassy to ask about challenging Greek municipal code. They told him to just resume work at 5. He said that set a dangerous precedent for regulatory overreach. The embassy hung up. His project finished 2 days later than planned, which he blamed entirely on archaic Mediterranean work culture. Nobody else thought 2 days mattered. I met a woman from Dallas in a small town outside Porto who was convinced the entire village was on strike because every shop had a fachado sign at 1 p.m. She walked into the tourist information office and demanded to know why the workers were protesting. The woman at the desk said it was lunch, not a protest. The tourist said lunch didn't take 3 hours and asked when the labor dispute would be resolved. The desk woman explained that Portuguese shops traditionally close midday for family meals and rest. The American said that tradition was economically unsustainable and cited a Harvard Business Review article about productivity optimization. The desk woman said the shops would reopen at 4. The American said that was unacceptable and asked to speak to the mayor. The desk woman said the mayor was also at lunch. The American left to write a blog post about Europe's refusal to embrace modern commerce. When the shops reopened at 4:07, she returned to buy a scarf and asked the shopkeeper if they'd considered staying open through lunch to increase revenue. The shopkeeper said no, she preferred eating with her family. The American bought the scarf and left a 1-star review citing limited operating hours and resistance to customer feedback. The shop has been in that family for 4 generations. They're doing fine. A bakery in Florence closes from 1:30 to 4 p.m. every day for riposo. I've walked past it 100 times, seen the sign, absorbed it as part of the neighborhood rhythm. An American tourist did not absorb it. She arrived at 2:15 p.m., found the door locked, and immediately started knocking. When no one answered, she cupped her hands against the glass and peered inside. The lights were off. She knocked harder. A local walking by told her the bakery was closed until 4. She said she could see bread on the shelves and didn't understand why they wouldn't just sell it to her now. The local said the owner was resting. She said resting was something you did at home, not during business hours, and that leaving inventory visible but unavailable was false advertising. The local walked away. She stayed there for another 5 minutes, taking photos of the closed sign as evidence of what she called hostile business practices. When I walked past at 4:03, she was inside buying ciabatta and telling the owner about American bakery hours. He nodded politely and wrapped her bread. She left satisfied that she'd educated someone today. The bakery has operated the same schedule for 23 years. There's a cafe in Thessaloniki that closes every day from 3 to 6 p.m. Not for any particular reason that the owner explains. It's just when he closes. An American graduate student doing research in Greece treated this like a philosophical problem that needed solving. She'd show up at 3:05 and find it closed, try again at 3:30, closed, try at 4:45, still closed. On the fifth day, she waited outside until the owner arrived at 6:02 to reopen. She asked why he closed during prime afternoon hours when university students needed quiet study spaces. He said he used that time to visit his mother. She said that was admirable but inefficient, and had he considered hiring someone to cover those hours so he could maintain continuous operations. He said no, he liked visiting his mother. She said he was leaving money on the table and asked if he'd run the numbers on potential afternoon revenue. He said he hadn't and didn't plan to. She said that was financially irresponsible and offered to create a business model for him. He thanked her and didn't give her his email. She came back the next day at 2:55, ordered coffee, and asked if he'd thought about her proposal. He said no. She's still in Thessaloniki. She still goes to that cafe. It still closes from 3 to 6. A restaurant in Dubrovnik closes for the entire month of August. The sign on the door says, Zatvoreno Duwan, Rujna, with a little drawing of a beach umbrella. This is extremely common in coastal Croatia. Restaurant owners work brutal hours during tourist season, then take August off to rest before September. An American food blogger found this unacceptable. She'd planned her trip specifically to review this restaurant, and its August closure derailed her entire content calendar. She tracked down the owner's personal Facebook and sent a message asking if he'd open just for one day so she could publish her review on schedule. He didn't respond. She posted on the restaurant's business page, saying that closing during peak season showed a fundamental misunderstanding of the service industry. 12 locals commented defending the closure, explaining that Croatian hospitality workers are human beings who deserve rest. She replied that rest could be scheduled during off-season months when it wouldn't impact customer access. The locals stopped responding. She left Croatia, wrote a scathing review of a restaurant she never ate at, citing unprofessional scheduling decisions and disregard for visitor expectations. The restaurant reopened September 1st. They're fully booked through October. She updated her review to note they're now open, still calling the August closure a missed opportunity. The owner just had his best year since opening. There's a small grocery in a village outside Valencia that keeps hours so inconsistent you'd think they're making them up daily. Sometimes it opens at 9, sometimes 10:30. Sometimes the owner tapes a note that says, Vuelvo pronto, and disappears for 2 hours. An American remote worker who moved there for a year could not handle the uncertainty. She started documenting the hours in a spreadsheet, tracking patterns, trying to predict when the store would be open. After 6 weeks of data, she approached the owner with her findings and suggested implementing fixed hours so customers could plan accordingly. The owner said he opened when he felt like it. She said that wasn't a business strategy. He said it had worked for 30 years. She said it would work better with structure and offered to print him a schedule. He declined. She created one anyway and posted it on a community board with a note saying, suggested hours for. The owner saw it, laughed, and threw it away. The store still opens whenever he decides. She still shops there. She still checks the spreadsheet. It still doesn't help. An American woman in rural Norway called a taxi company at 11 p.m. on a Saturday, furious that no one would pick her up. She'd been at a friend's cabin and needed a ride back to town. The dispatcher explained that the service stopped at 10 on weekends. She said that was absurd, that she'd never heard of a taxi service with a curfew, and what were people supposed to do if they needed transport after 10? The dispatcher said most people planned ahead or stayed where they were. She said planning ahead for every possible scenario was unrealistic and cited American 24-hour rideshare services as proof of what functional transportation looked like. The dispatcher said Norway wasn't America and maybe she should have checked before assuming. She said checking shouldn't be necessary because basic services should be universally available, and did Norway not have regulations requiring minimum service levels for public safety? The dispatcher said this wasn't a public safety issue, it was a Saturday night. She asked to speak to a manager. He said he was the manager. She demanded a formal complaint process. He said she could email the company on Monday. She asked what she was supposed to do right now. He suggested calling her friend. She'd already left the cabin. She spent the night at a gas station and wrote to Norway's Ministry of Transport about inadequate rural taxi coverage. They never replied. She still tells people Norway has a transportation crisis. A grocery delivery service in Copenhagen stops taking orders at 9 p.m. Not because the store closes, but because the delivery drivers go home. An American tech worker relocated for a startup job thought this was a solvable logistics problem. He'd gotten used to midnight grocery deliveries in San Francisco and couldn't understand why Copenhagen hadn't optimized for the same flexibility. He emailed the company suggesting they implement overnight shifts to capture late-night demand. They replied that their drivers preferred regular hours. He said regular hours were limiting their market potential and attached a presentation on 24-hour fulfillment models. They didn't respond. He sent a follow-up proposing a gig economy framework where independent contractors could cover night shift. Still no response. He left a review saying the service was stuck in an outdated labor model that prioritizes employee comfort over customer needs. A Danish friend saw the review and asked if he'd considered that maybe prioritizing employee comfort was the point. He said that wasn't how you built a competitive business. His friend said Copenhagen wasn't trying to compete with San Francisco. He said that was exactly the problem. He still uses the service. He still orders before 9. He still thinks they're doing it wrong. A hardware store in Reykjavik closes at 6 p.m. on weekdays and 4 p.m. on Saturdays. It doesn't open on Sundays. An American contractor doing a renovation project in Iceland treated this like a logistical nightmare deliberately designed to sabotage his timeline. He'd gotten used to American big box stores open until 9 or 10 p.m. and couldn't adjust to Iceland's hours. When he needed an emergency drill bit at 6:30 on a Thursday, he drove to the store, found it closed, and called the owner's mobile number listed on the website. The owner answered and said the store was closed. He said he could see the inventory through the window and only needed one item. The owner said he could come back tomorrow. He said tomorrow was Friday, and he needed it tonight because his work schedule required evening hours. The owner asked why he was working at night. He said that's when he had time. The owner said that sounded like poor planning. He said poor planning was running a hardware store that closed before most people finished work. The owner said most Icelanders finished work at 5. He said that proved his point about inflexible scheduling. The owner wished him luck and hung up. He bought the drill bit the next morning and told everyone he met about Iceland's customer service problem. Nobody agreed with him. There's a post office in a small Austrian town that closes for 90 minutes at lunch, from noon to 1:30 p.m. This is written on the door, the website, and a sign visible from the parking lot. An American student doing a semester abroad missed all 3 notices and arrived at 12:20 to mail a package. The door was locked. She pulled on it harder, assuming it was stuck. Still locked. She looked through the window and saw an employee eating a sandwich at the desk. She knocked. The employee pointed at the sign. She knocked again and held up her package, gesturing that it would only take a minute. The employee shook his head and kept eating. She stood there for 30 seconds, then took a photo of the employee refusing service and posted it in an expat Facebook group with a caption about Austrian inefficiency. 3 Austrians replied explaining the lunch closure law. She said laws that prevented customer service during business hours were counterproductive and probably violated some EU directive on commerce access. They told her to come back at 1:30. She said she had class at 1:30 and needed to mail the package now. They said the post office didn't care about her class schedule. She waited until 1:32, mailed the package, and told the employee this never would have happened in America. The employee said he knew, that's why he liked Austria. She graduated that semester. The post office still closes for lunch. I'm in a bookstore in Ljubljana that closes at 7 p.m. It's 6:50 and an American woman is browsing the travel section with the slow, deliberate pace of someone who's nowhere near finished. The clerk announces closing time. She says she needs 5 more minutes. He says the store closes at 7. She says she's a paying customer and should be allowed to finish shopping. He says she can come back tomorrow. She says tomorrow is Saturday and she's flying out Sunday, so this is her only chance. He says the store is also open Saturday. She says that's not the point, that she's here now, and it's poor customer service to rush a buyer who's clearly interested in purchasing. He says the store is closed and begins turning off lights. She buys 2 books in 90 seconds, pays, and leaves. Outside, she tells her husband this would never happen at a Barnes & Noble. He doesn't respond. They walk past 3 more shops with Zapparto signs in the windows. She photographs each one. I'm not sure what she plans to do with the evidence. Maybe nothing. Maybe she just needs proof that she was right, that somewhere, somehow, these hours are unreasonable. The bookstore opens tomorrow at 10. She'll be at the airport. Ljubljana keeps its own schedule. That's what we can't accept. Not that the hours are different, but that they're not being different at us. They're just different. The shops close because that's when they close. The owners rest because rest matters more than one more transaction. And no amount of American expectation changes that. We keep thinking if we explain it clearly enough, if we cite enough data about productivity and revenue optimization, someone will finally agree that we're right. But they won't. Because they're not trying to be American. They're trying to be themselves. And that rhythm, that intentional slowing down, that commitment to rest and family and life beyond commerce, it's not a bug in their system. It's the whole point. We just can't see it because we're too busy checking our watches.